Got it.
Okay. Hey everyone, this is Stephen Booth of Genius Unbound. We're doing our first author interview with veteran journalist Bob Cyphers. I'm going to let him do a little intro for himself. We're going to be talking about his book, Dead End, Inside the Hunt for the I-70 Serial Killer, and possibly some of his other books. Bob, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll get into the questions.
Okay. Veteran, I guess, means old, which certainly foots the bill. A lifetime career in journalism because I couldn't do anything else. Newspaper, radio, television, small market, medium market, large market across the country. Wound up with my last 35 years at the CBS affiliate, KMOV, the former legendary KMOX TV in St. Louis. My last year there, word got out that I was retiring, and uh, people reached out to me to take me to lunch and stuff. And St. Charles, a community near St. Louis, called me to come out for lunch. And I thought they were going to maybe have a cake for me and a little party. And I've been kind of a thorn in their side for a while. But I get out there and there is no cake, there is no party. It's like, can you pack a suitcase and travel the country? We're chasing down that serial killer one last time. I know it was a story you'd covered a long time, Bob. And if you're interested, let's go. And I was interested, and here we are.
Oh, wow, that's a great story. Okay, well, maybe we'll get you to elaborate on that a little bit. I got some questions here for you that hopefully will get some great stories out of you. Do me a favor, give me a quick rundown on Dead End. What's the story on that?
Okay, so back in 1992, we had a serial killer going across the country on Interstate 70. It's one of the longest running serial killer unsolved cold cases in America. What made this one different than, Dahmers and Bundys and Gacy's is this guy had no motive. He would just drive along the highway, and wherever he felt like getting off at an exit, he'd park his car. He'd then look for a little strip mall store where a woman was working alone in the middle of the daylight in busy areas. He would walk in, shoot her, and walk out. He wouldn't touch her. He wouldn't take any money. It was just in and out at random as he's traveling across the country, going back and forth from Indianapolis, where he started, to Wichita, Kansas, to back to Indiana, killing people en route. And a year goes by, the case is unsolved, and then the killings start again in Texas. Very similar, right along the highway. More women are dead there. And the case never got solved. And one of the reasons it never got solved is there was no motive for the profilers. It was like no crazy person has acted like this. And DNA back then, Steve, was just semen and saliva. He's just walking in, pointing the gun, shooting some woman in the head and leaving. There is no semen, there is no saliva, there is no fingerprints in a cash register. It was just the thrill of the kill. And for profilers in Quantico, that made this case very difficult.
Wow. How many people did he wind up confirmed killing?
Well, it depends on if you believe Texas is connected a year later to the I-70 killers. In I-70, you've got one in Indianapolis, you've got two in Wichita, you've got one more in Terre Haute, you've got St. Louis, you've got Kansas City. What's that? Makes six. In Texas, you've got two more, makes eight. Another one in Houston, a woman's barely left alive. We can get to that. Vicki Webb, that makes nine. And is there something else out there? We don't know, but probably at least six, likely eight, and perhaps more.
Wow. I can see why the team was very interested in getting this case solved back in whatever year. I'm sorry, whatever year it was that they had you come out for your party. But let's get into some questions, and we'll see what we can get out of you. What moment during your investigation most deeply unsettled you, and why?
Well, I'll tell you, this didn't take long. We got in the car and we started doing things chronologically with police. And the first stop was Indianapolis, where the first killing was, where Robin Fuldar was killed. And this one really, it just showed exactly what was happening here, because we pull into this little store that was a Payless shoe store at the time is a Batteries Plus now. You've seen that they're square box. But the amazing thing is it's connected to a Speedway gas station, just like
Right.
you see McDonald's connected to a gas station now. They're literally 20 steps apart. And he makes the killing in the middle of the day in an incredibly busy area. And it's like, well, how would he have accomplished this with all these people around? There was no car ever seen. How does this happen? And so when you say, what's unsettling, it's like, boy, nobody kills somebody. How many people are at the gas station going back and forth? And then the police are thinking, there's no car. I wonder if he pulled into the gas station, filled up his car, just walked next door, did his killing, went back to his car and left. That's how bizarre the very first scene came, and the rest of them just followed like dominoes.
And there was no CCTV anywhere, or they just couldn't pick one car out?
Not in 1992.
Okay. Well, wow. Let's try this one. What theories did you develop about the killer's psychology after retracing his steps across multiple states?
Well, again, talking in Quantico, the profilers would say, we know why Bundy killed college girls. Ted Bundy wasn't trying to kill me. We know why Dahmer killed gay guys. Dahmer wasn't trying to kill me. But this is just completely different. This was something psychotic. This was almost the thrill of the kill. And it's not just playing with the cops. Can I get away with murder? If you and me are going to kill somebody, we're probably waiting until nighttime and hiding behind a bush or something. This guy's doing it not only in the middle of the day, but in the middle of the day in the busiest areas he can possibly find in these towns. It would be the last place in the world anybody would think about killing anybody to try to get away. Then you add in no rape. He never touched a woman. He never took any money. It's like there is no profile for this because this has never existed before.
And he never wrote any letters, no taunting of the police, nothing.
Nope. He's not Zodiac. He's not BTK. He's just
not the Unabomber.
Alone in the dark. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. My next question, I think you answered, but let's try it anyways. Why do you think the killer chose such high-risk locations in broad daylight for his murders? Do you have any thoughts on that, or is it just random?
He had to want to just blend in. He had to. That's the gas station in Indianapolis. In St. Louis, where Nancy Kitzmiller was killed, where I covered the story that day, the thought was he went out the back door of the store. The back door butted up against a golf course on a Sunday afternoon where people are out golfing. He's not going to be running away with a gun there. He walked in the front door of a busy shopping center on a very busy Sunday middle of the day and walked out the front door after the killing. Same thing in Kansas City, same thing in Indianapolis, same things in Terre Haute. He wasn't even trying to hide.
Wow. No, he was not. I agree with you. I mean, I'm not any better at profiling anybody else, and probably worse than a bunch, but that's just bizarre. It doesn't it fits a pattern, but it doesn't fit a pattern that I can identify.
Yeah, he's not OJ trying to get away with murder. I mean, he's getting away with murder.
How did revisiting the crime scenes decades later affect your perception of the case?
Just tremendous appreciation for law enforcement. When they brought this task force together, they brought back every cop who ever worked on these cases and realized these cases just passed along over years. You're talking 30 years. So in some cities, the file of this case would land on 5 different officers' desks over time. And all the old cops that came back, the new cops that came back, they brought in DNA people from around the country, the FBI, the ATF. They brought in me. But they wanted a wide selection of anybody and everybody to take a crack at this. And they made it clear right away, with everything they had, this was still a needle in the haystack.
Wow.
and they were still going after it.
Yeah, no, it sounds like they I don't know that there was a lot going on with the law enforcement as far as really sincerely wanting to get this guy caught. It's really kind of unfortunate that you haven't had the kind of response that you're looking for. Let's try that. This is off my list, but what kind of response have you had as far as finding? I mean, you wrote this book specifically with the purpose of getting people to respond to the case. You put your phone number or email address or whatever it is in the back of the books, the phone number of the cops. Has it elicited any kind of a response from and has it gotten anywhere for anybody?
It has. I mean, I think I've joked with you before. I've had a man ring my doorbell in the morning. I've had people email me with names. I've done podcasts. I did a podcast with a couple guys who were absolutely 100% certain they knew who this guy was, and they had a name. We didn't release it on the podcast, but they gave it to me, and they said,
Mhm.
"Get it to the police. We are 100% certain." I get the name to the police, and to show you how good police activity can be, within a half an hour, I got a response back from police. They had checked out this random name and found out that this guy they gave them in 1992, during that span of the time of the killings, had never left had never left Hawaii. So
Okay. Well, I just got an email from somebody a couple of days ago, didn't I? I mean, I forwarded it on to you.
yes, yes,
Somebody was convinced that they had the name, and they sent it to me because they could find me as the publisher.
right.
And what did that same sort of phenomenon happen with that? You sent it along to the cops,
I
and
did, and that name from that person who sent me the email had to do with a man named Herb Baumeister, who was also a serial killer in the same years in the same city of Indianapolis. But
wow.
Herb Baumeister was killing gay men, and
Okay.
he never met the profile, and he committed suicide. And his story is also in the book, but he
Mhm.
was not that name was not a suspect.
I see. Okay, yeah, the MO is I mean, if he was killing gay men, then he's probably not going around and randomly killing lone women in stores. It doesn't. You're right. That doesn't match up. Let's try this one. What role did small human gestures like Mike Crook's annual calls play in this long pursuit of justice?
Uh, Really cool. I stop and think of the police. Mike Crook was the original man on the first scene in Indianapolis. And the
Hmm.
first chapter of my book is how he stays in contact with the sister Susan of the murdered girl, Robin. And he calls her every day on the anniversary, not to tell her he has anything new, just to say,
Hmm.
I haven't given up. I'm still thinking about you.
Wow.
Brad Rumsey in Terre Haute, Indiana, has retired.
Hmm.
Uh, we still keep in touch all the time. He's my golfing partner because we want to talk about this case. He wants to know what I've heard and what he's
Hmm.
heard. Kelly Rhodes, who's handling the case in St. Charles, is really the lead person on this. When I went to Indianapolis last year for a media appearance, it was a wintry cold day, and I'm driving 3 hours to get there, and it was freezing cold. And I get there to meet the cops for lunch, and they say, "Hey, Bob, we got to put this off a couple hours. We got something else to do with St. Charles Police." And I said, "Really? What's going on there?" And they said, "Well, Kelly Rhodes is coming over here, and we got to talk to her real quick." I said, "Kelly?" I said, "I just talked to Kelly a couple days ago. She's 8 months pregnant." But here she was on this cold, wintry day, traveling
Hmm.
across the country in a car to talk to the Indiana police about our case. It's just wherever I went, it never ever stopped. I mentioned Wichita, the BTK killer. The cop who handles this case, Tim Ralph, is the cop that solved the BTK killer case in Wichita. He's had two of these cases on his desk now in his career. Just amazing people all the way through.
Yeah, it's that's um that is the dedication that the law enforcement has for this case and you is just phenomenal. You know, I mean, I really haven't heard of a case handled just this way before, but on the other hand, true crime isn't exactly the thing that I'm most interested in. I'm a science fiction guy when it comes to books and stuff. The true crime stuff is my wife. But you know, I've gotten to the point where I'm conversant in Ted Bundy and the Zodiac and the Unabomber and you know some of the people. I'm not conversant in your case yet, and I'm working my way up to that one.
All right.
So, what was the most surprising or emotional interview you conducted for the book?
Well, let's do emotional first. That would have been in Raytown, Kansas City suburb where Sarah Blessing was killed. She's at the last store in a strip mall, a herbal store, and right next to her store is a video store. They used to have these things, Steve, called Blockbuster.
I seem to remember something like that. Yes.
Well, he's got a store like that, a video store, and he sees this well-dressed, preppy-looking man come right to his window, stand outside, and just stare at it. And he's looking
Mhm.
right back at the guy. And after he's like, "You coming in?" The guy didn't come in. He left the screen, walked away, and 30 seconds later, the store owner hears pop, 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 like gunfire. He opens up
Mhm.
the door, runs next door, sees the lady's body there in the store, Sarah Blessing dead, and sees the same guy he saw in his window running up a hill real fast to get away.
Oh, wow. So you have an eyewitness.
30 years ago, the only eyewitness, 30-year case. He's crying on camera 30 years later, telling me, "Bob, I see his face every night when I lay down." He can barely get through the interview. You would have think this happened to him 10 minutes ago. It happened
Wow.
30 years ago. Then you talk about surprising. At the same place, we're getting ready to leave. We're in a parking lot. It's a
Hmm.
busy strip center. And a car pulls up, and there's a man in the car, and he's acting kind of strange. And he says,
Hmm.
you're here for the murder 30 years ago. And I'm thinking, well, he wants to meet the TV guy or whatever. And I say, yeah, and I'm being nice. And we're getting ready to go. And um, he's really acting strange and nervous, and he won't stop. And you know, in this day and age, the media is like the enemy of the people to some people. And
Hmm.
I wasn't looking to stick around for a strange guy coming up to us.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And I'm telling my crew, let's get going. And the guy turns his car off and hollers at me, and he says, "I was here that day." And
Wow. Okay.
I look at him and I say, "Well, have you?" I had gone through the police file. I knew
Hmm.
everybody that was there, and there was nothing like this. And I said, "Did you talk to police?" And he says, "No." I said, "Well, why not?" He goes, I'm always afraid the guy, if my name's out there, the guy's going to come after me." And
Hmm.
I said, "Well, will you talk to me?" "No, no, 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 no." And we talk for a few minutes and we get ready to leave. And he says, "Do you have to use my name? Can you block out my face?" And I said, "Listen, I'll do anything to help solve this case. I don't need your name. I can block out your face. I want to know what you saw. Here's the number to the police department. Talk to me, talk to them. Anything can
Hmm.
help." And we talked to this guy, and sure enough, just like the Blockbuster guy, he's at the restaurant a couple stores down, sees the guy walk in, same description, sees the guy casing out the place, looking around. Now, in this case, there's too many people in there, obviously, and the guy leaves. And the guy that I'm talking
Hmm.
to in the car is like, "Who walks into a restaurant, stands there, and then just turns around and walks out?" Then he hears about the killing the next day, sees a description from the witness, and says,
Hmm.
"That was my guy."
Wow. Now let's back up one step. Though you said something interesting as you were describing, you know, these two witnesses. I take it wasn't the killer wasn't just pop one to the head. It was multiple gunshots.
He would take every woman to the back store of her building in a back room, almost like police believe he was in and out quick, but he believed they thought it was a robbery. He'd show a gun and he would say, "Just come on back to the back room. Nothing's going to happen. I'm going to tie you up back there and I'm going to get out." And the women went, and he killed them quickly there and then made his departure.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Um, Do you believe the killer knew his victims in any capacity, or were they chosen purely at random?
I can't believe he did. I mean, we're talking across the country.
Hmm.
Um, we've all seen these stories where, somebody wants to blow up an airplane because their wife's on the plane or something, and they wind up killing 30 other people. But it's just hard to believe. I mean, the first killing is in Indianapolis, and 3 days later, he's in Wichita. It's 800 miles away. I mean,
Hmm.
so as the police are interviewing family members and friends in Indy, because that's what they're trained to do, and that's who the killer is, that's the motive there, somebody who knows
Hmm.
somebody, they realize, well, wait a minute. Why are we interviewing people in Indianapolis if we've got a dead body in Wichita? It's just hard to believe that he knew anybody. The victims all seem to have all women, all young, all brunette.
Hmm.
So police can start connecting dots. But to the best we can find, I met every family member that's still alive saying,
Hmm.
any chance you think any of these can be connected? And nobody believes that. Nobody believes that he knew who these people were. This was totally random. And then on to Texas. I mean,
Yeah.
where,
No, you're right. It doesn't make sense. The fact that the women are all in exactly the same circumstances and he knew them, that
right,
doesn't make sense.
right.
So, I can see that. Yeah. Was there a single piece of evidence or moment during the investigation that you felt you'd almost that it would almost crack the case?
Well, the gun. And that's what led police to realize they had a serial killer. They didn't know right away. They didn't know after Indy. They didn't know after Wichita. They didn't know after Terre Haute. On the fourth killing in St. Louis, the ballistics all matched. And again, back in the 90s, 92, Steve, when you were 17 years old, there was no internet yet. And so
Uh-huh.
police departments, if there's a killing in Indianapolis, there's no reason for Wichita to be calling up the phone and saying what's going on. But
Hmm.
once they had ballistics of all the shell casings at the crime scenes of the same gun, they knew they had a serial killer. But now it took another turn. The gun, when you talk about the best thing for evidence, was the most unlikely gun you could possibly imagine for a killer to use. It's called an Irma Werke. It's a World War I German Navy target pistol that barely functioned in World War I. So the gun was almost 100 years old. It
Hmm.
constantly had jamming. Its firing capability was 50-50. But then the
Hmm.
bullets, the shell casings on the floor, the police found were all covered in jeweler's red rouge. Jewelers use the red rouge for cleaning utensils, basically, for cleaning rings.
Hmm.
So now you've got this incredibly strange gun nobody's ever seen for 100 years, and you've got red jeweler's rouge. Now,
Hmm.
your average criminal buying a gun in the trunk of somebody's car is not putting these two elements together to kill somebody. This is somebody that has had a gun. Where does he get the gun? It's most likely passed down through the family. Okay.
Hmm.
Somebody out there, the police thinks knows somebody who's had a German collection of guns and now a jewelry combination. This man or
Yeah.
family work in the jewelry business. So that
Hmm.
combination was the best chance and still might be the best chance for catching this guy.
Okay. Well, you don't actually have the gun. You have the shell casings with markings that match the gun, right?
That's correct. Police department has displays of the gun. They've gone out and
Mm-hmm.
bought the gun. They've gone to gun shows and showed off the gun. Uh,
Hmm.
they've done everything they can find to see anybody who might know anything about that gun or anybody who ever sold that gun to somebody. I mean, they've
Wow.
tracked this gun to the end of the earth.
I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised that nobody has come up with anything that remotely looks like lead on that because gun people know their guns. I can't imagine if somebody ever encountered a gun like that, they wouldn't remember it.
You're absolutely
A
right.
gun collector specifically. I mean, it's like collecting baseball cards. You know what
Yep,
I'm saying?
I do.
So it would definitely be something that's very memorable. Um, how did the realization the killer may have mistaken a man for a woman in the McCown case alter investigators' understanding of his behavior?
It's an unanswered question. The thought from police was a couple things. Again, Mick McCown, the one male victim in Terre Haute, police believe at the time he may have had long black hair and a ponytail and may have resembled a woman.
Mm-hmm.
The family says no, he had his hair cut at that time, or at least that's their memory of the funeral situation. The other thing about Mick McCown is, though, he was the one person who was not taken to a back room and shot. He was shot immediately on floor. Police believe that as soon as the killer walked in and realized he was not a woman, he had to change plans, and he wasn't going to be able to slowly converse a male for perhaps a struggle to do something. So he shot him from behind. He asked him to bend down to pick up something on the floor. As soon as McCown turned, he shot him in the back of the head.
Wow.
Makes sense, but we just don't know about the hair situation. I think he's the only male among all these victims. He still has brownish brunette hair. He's not taken to the back room. I think the police are probably right. This was a mistaken identity on the killer's part, but he walked in to do a job and he did it.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Which city or crime scene felt like most eerie or off when you visited, and what made it stand out?
Well, I mentioned Indy and the gas, the gas connection on the very busy street on Pendleton Pike. That was difficult. And my story in St. Louis that has the golf course right next to a brand new shopping center just opened in a busy area. But also I would say Kansas City, Raytown, the Bogey Hills, where I mentioned the killer runs up a hill to get away.
That's
So
the witness. That's the witness event. Okay. Yeah.
So there's a big parking lot there. So obviously, once again, the killer's not parking his car in the parking lot and getting in it and leaving, which tells you he didn't do it in St. Louis either. He didn't do it in Indy. He didn't do it anywhere else. This killer fled on foot. And he's dressed in a sport coat and nice slacks and nice shoes. Again, blending in as the least guy you'd think of. He doesn't look like, okay? But the hill he ran up, Steve, this woman's store is right at the end, and he runs up this really steep hill to get away. That was not a small hill. And then where's he going? It's a street up there. I doubt there's a car just sitting there parked on the street. That wouldn't make sense either. He had to go somewhere. So all of these scenes just, again, he doesn't make sense what he does, but the scenes don't make sense. And the cops have said since day one, Bob, if we just had that getaway vehicle, if we knew how he was getting away, was there somebody else driving a car waiting for him? Because he had to get out of Dodge quick. Killers hang around. And he's not going to be walking the streets of Wichita dressed in a coat and slacks and dress shoes if an eyewitness has seen him 30 seconds ago.
Right. That stands out. It blends in, but it also stands out when he's running up a hill. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Why do you think this case has remained unsolved for so long, despite the number of witnesses and locations?
Well, as far as the number of witnesses, there's really a couple. In Wichita, which was probably the strangest of all the killings, 2 women were there killed instead of 1. They worked at a tuxedo store, and they close at 6 o'clock, and the phone rings at like 5:45. A man saying, "Hey, I'm rushing to Wichita for a wedding. The wedding's at 7. I need a cummerbund. I can be there in like 20 minutes. Do you mind staying open an extra 5 minutes past 6 o'clock, and I'll get there as soon as I can?" And the 2 women inside, Pam Majors and Pam Smith, say, "Yeah, sure, come on by." So about 6:01, 6:02 hits, and the man walks in the front door. But this man is not looking for a cummerbund.
I see.
This man is the killer. And he takes the 2 women to the back room, and he kills them. And as he's walking out the door at 6:05, guess who walks in?
The guy who called to get the cummerbund.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
And the killer tries to get the man to come to the back room, and the man's like backing out. He sees a gun in a wedding veil. Oh my! No, I don't see nothing. I'm leaving. I'm walking out of here. And the killer's got to make a decision really fast. He allows the man to leave.
Oh, wow.
The man scared to death doesn't call police for an hour. One of the women who died was still alive and died later at the hospital. Had he called the police right away, she might have lived. That witness gave us the first composite sketch.
Right.
But that witness, as police told me, was really afterwards invaluable to them. He had major health mental issues after this. He's since passed away. So that witness is gone. Other than giving a sketch, he knew nothing else. The other witness then is in Kansas City at Raytown at the Blockbuster store. He's the main witness. He's got the eyeball look. So you've really got two. So not a lot of witnesses, only one still alive. And
Right.
it's a 30-year-old case. And that leads us to Vicky Webb, perhaps, as we go to Texas, where he's killed two women in Dallas and then goes down to Houston to kill the last and third one, Vicky Webb, puts the gun, leaves her, shoots her, leaves her for dead. She's bleeding to death. And as he's walking out the door, he looks back and sees that she's barely still alive.
Oh, my God.
He goes back to her, puts the gun to her head, pulls the trigger, and it jams. Vicky lives. She goes into hiding because she's scared to death. Her story made news down there, and she knows somebody tried to kill her. Was it the I-70 killer or somebody else? It's the same thing as the guy. And she goes into hiding for 30 years. She's moved many times around the country. She's remarried a couple times. She's gone into hiding. I reached out to the FBI and I said, for my book, I really, really need Vicky Webb. Can you get me Vicky Webb? And they said, Bob, can you get us Vicky Webb? If you find her, we'd love to talk to her because she was long gone.
Wow.
And I spent a couple of months. I told my bosses at KMOV, I need to find this woman. Well, even if you found her, she'd turn you down, probably, but I need to find her. And I literally called hundreds and hundreds of people. All I knew was a woman named Vicky Webb from 30 years ago. I went through divorce records, real estate records. I went through every record known to man. I had a list of about 600 possible names. I'm calling people on the phone. Hello, I'm click, click, click. You know how it is. You get a
yeah.
And finally, days and days go by, and I'm really wasting KMOV TV's money on what I'm doing. But finally, one day I get through the whole thing. Hi, this is Bob. I'm looking for Vicky Webb. I'm a news reporter. I'm doing I get through my whole thing, which was a miracle. And it's just quiet on the other end of the phone. And I say, ma'am, are you there? And she says, I'm here. And I said, is there any chance you're the Vicky Webb I'm looking for? And there's more dead air. And then finally I probably am.
Oh, wow.
Wow. So wow is right. And I said, listen, here's my name. Google me. Go to my TV station website. I'm trying to hunt down the I-70 killer. I'm working with law enforcement. I need to talk to you. Is there any chance at all? Well, no, she wasn't gonna. Well, months went by. We became texting pals. I'd text her, hi, Vicky, how you doing? Happy Thanksgiving. Hi, Bob, Merry Christmas. What are you getting the grandkids? Hi, Vicky, you're going on vacation, I heard. Yes, Bob, I just got back from months went by. I gave her names of all the police department officials I was talking to, everybody. She finally texts me back and she says, all it said with 3 words, let's do it.
Oh my God. That must have been a thrill.
It really was. Hands in the air. It was like airplane reservations. I'm coming your way, girl. And her story, which is a crucial part of the book, is amazing. So you talk about eyewitnesses. Was her attempted killer the I-70 killer? Police can't say for sure. Mike Crook, who's had this case since day one, the longest cop, he says it is. He's convinced it is. He went to every scene in Texas and he says, this is it. This is the same exact thing. We don't know for sure, but her story alone is remarkable for anybody who wants to read the book. And, if there is an eyewitness someday, it's Tim Hickman in Raytown and it's Vicky Webb in Texas.
Wow. Okay. If you could sit down with the killer today, what would you want to ask him? Or
I guess I'd like to know how it starts on day one. You know,
Mhm.
people say, well, why'd you do it? I mean, I don't know, anybody can explain this, but something starts on day one. Did he break up with a wife who has brunette hair on day one and hates all women? Was his mother a child beater who had, you know, how does this thing start on day one? And, you know, how did he pick his spots? I don't think, police don't believe there was any thought in picking his spots. They just think he just got off and wherever he felt like getting off and looked around for the strip mall and eyeballed the story. They don't think he planned it out. But the interesting part about that, Steve, is to get from Indiana to Wichita, and he's killing in
Mhm.
all these states along the way, Texas, he had to pass through Illinois,
Mhm.
east to west. He
Right.
had to make stops. He had to stop and go to the bathroom or get something to eat. The likelihood is he stopped at Illinois and went in places and may have been close to killing somebody, maybe at a gas station. A woman's alone,
Mhm.
and perhaps another customer comes walking in. Perhaps
Right.
fate saved the day. Nothing in Illinois, but you know he had to stop.
Mhm.
So, you know, I, Tim Ralph, the cop in Wichita who's handled the BTK case, in this case,
Mhm.
I said, if you ever get this guy, what are you going to, because he interviewed the BTK killer afterwards. And Tim says, none of these two guys think alike. It's impossible. In fact, they probably have thoughts. So to think that getting into the brains of one serial killer can help predict the other one, good luck.
Mhm. You met one serial killer. You met one serial killer. I got
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Okay. What new forensic or technological advances give you the most hope that this case might still be solved?
Well, I'll tell you, I watched that story in Idaho where the guy's been charged, Kohlenberger, with killing those 4 college girls at the
Mhm.
university. And they tracked him down by going to his parents' house in Pennsylvania, where he had gone to, and pulling pizza boxes out of the garbage can to get the parents' genealogical DNA. And I, you know, it's not just his DNA again, but keep in mind back then, DNA was semen and saliva. We don't have that in
Mhm.
space. But we do have DNA's made advancements. Genealogical is the thing now. You know,
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
morbid as it sounds, they are exhuming dead grandparents' bodies for DNA testing to try to track down killers. So they're
Oh
not
my gosh.
stopping anywhere. So the pizza boxes are one thing, but the way they're going about the DNA, there's also touch or handler DNA.
I'm aware of that.
One piece was taken of all these killings. Mick McCown's wallet was missing in Terre Haute, the one male victim. And the
Mhm.
police were like, did he take it? Did he take it? Why would he take it? He didn't take any money. But
Mhm.
did he take the wallet? Family members say they can't find the wallet. The killer must have taken the wallet. And
Mhm.
so I asked Brad Rumsey, who's the lead detective on that case, gee, Brad, I know it was 30 years ago, but man, touch DNA, if you only had the pants of Mick McCown from 30 years ago, think what that would be worth. And
Mhm.
Brad's standing over a 5-foot putt with me, and he turns at me and looks at me and says, I got him. I got him.
Okay.
And so I pick up the phone and I call Tim Ralph in Wichita. Tim,
Mhm.
Tim, the witness said that the killer had a wedding veil around the gun. Man, is there any chance 30 years later you've got that? Bob, I got it.
Oh wow.
So again, the dedication of law enforcement people is just tremendous for me, and that's one of the reasons I've written the book for them. You know,
Mhm.
I'm just a little guy trying to help here, but if I could help them in any way on this, it would clearly be the greatest thing I've ever did in my career by far. What else does a journalist do to help civilization? I mean, this would be incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to the next question, which is how did writing the book change the way you view law enforcement, journalism, or even humanity?
I've always had tremendous respect for law enforcement. I've got another book coming out in September with a man named Joe Burgoon, who was the lead homicide investigator for the city of St. Louis for 40 years and saw thousands
Mhm.
of homicides. And I was on many scenes with him. So my dedication or my appreciation for law enforcement, 100%, can never be compromised. Journalism, like we say, as you know, it is the public perception has changed over time. I know what I did for my career and the standards that I would hold.
Mhm.
I'm never going to sacrifice that. Humanity, uh, is there a bad pea in every pod? I'm sure there is. But this one's the most sour tasting I've ever come across.
Yeah, wow. Okay. What do you hope families of the victims and readers take away from this book? Last question.
Well, I know the families are incredibly appreciative. I met every family member at every spot along the way. And the thanks that they were giving me after 30 years of frustration, not that they think Bob's going to solve the case, but just keeping it in the public eye, keeping it out there, showing the concern, letting them know through my eyes of what their police departments were doing to still try to solve these cases. I know the appreciation level is there, and for law enforcement never giving up. And just before we leave, I would say to you, Steve, through all this now, we have a suspect.
Wow.
We have
Okay.
and he's alive,
Mm-hmm.
and in his mind, he's well, and we'll find out. But we have a suspect, and it's just a matter now of putting two and two together for police. In fact, 10 years after the I-70 killings, right back in Terre Haute, another killing occurs. This time at a liquor store. And now technology's changed. Back then, for all these killings, there was no store security. A little bell would ring when a customer would walk in. But 10 years later, at 7th and 70 Liquors in Terre Haute, they've got security video cameras up in the stores. And in 2001, a man enters the store, a preppy looking man. He goes to the back of the store and pulls out a 6-pack of beer. He brings it to the counter, puts the beer down. Instead of taking the beer, he then pulls out a gun. He walks the man named Billy Brossman, who was working alone in the store, to the back of the store, shoots him, kills him, leaves him for dead, and then runs out the store. He doesn't even come back to pick up his beer.
Wow.
And so now police have a similar killing. What's the motive? It's not robbery. It's the same thing in the same town right down the street. Police believe that the Billy Brossman killer is the I-70 killer.
Why would he change his MO to kill men, though?
10 years go by. Maybe it was a thrill of the kill. But if they can tie Brossman to I-70, that's their best chance to solve this case.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much for all of that. I want to take this opportunity really quickly to read the sales copy, the back cover copy of the book of Dead Ends for those of you who haven't picked up the book. In 1992, a store clerk was found shot to death in broad daylight in the Boot Village in St. Charles, Missouri. Nothing was stolen. There was no sexual assault. The bizarre and seemingly isolated murder was quickly connected to others in Indianapolis, Wichita, Terre Haute, and Raytown. The media dubbed the suspect the I-70 serial killer. He has never been captured, and the story quickly fell out of the media's attention. But the cases never went cold for the officers in those cities. In 2021, with the advancement of in DNA, St. Charles Police Captain Raymond Floyd launched a task force bringing all jurisdictions together along with the federal agencies to take one final crack at solving the crimes. The task force selected Bob Cyphers of KMOV TV to follow them along city by city in the hunt for the killer. Cyphers and his KMOV crew produced a 7-part award-winning series called Chasing the I-70 Serial Killer. Their work led to national exposure of the case in People magazine and on the Discovery Channel, winning an Edward R. Murrow Award and being nominated for an Emmy. Dead End: Inside the Hunt for the I-70 Serial Killer follows on the work done by the task force with the important goal of keeping the story alive in the public eye. New evidence never before available to the public is revealed here, with the hopes that triggering the memory or revealing a new lead. The task force may be closed, but the drive to find this killer is alive and well. Anyone who may have information about this case should contact the I-70 hotline at 1-800-800-3510. Wow. Okay. One last thing. You've got a book coming up in September. Give us the elevator pitch on the September book. What's it called and what's it about?
It's called Frozen, 25 Frozen, One Thawed. It's about 25 cold cases in the Midwest that I covered during my career at St. Louis. So the Missouri, Illinois area, some really incredible cases that are all unsolved. If we got one tip on one case after all these years, it'd be great. But then the One Thawed. St. Louis was the site of perhaps maybe the nation's first public massacre of shooting. It was a national supermarket store on Labor Day weekend that closed down on Friday night. 7 managers stuck around to get ready to open it Saturday morning. And 2 killers came in, lined up the 7 managers on the floor before they robbed the store, shot them all in the back of the head and killed them and left them for dead.
Wow.
One of the 7 survived. And again, like Vicky Webb, he kind of, laid low. Police went for months trying to solve the case. It was a gigantic case at the time. Again, this was before CNN would show up with live trucks on every story. So it might not ring a bell with people, but it was a gigantic massacre. And the lead cop in that case was Joe Burgoon. And the man who survived the shooting was a man named Harold Moore. And I've got both of them in the book, and I've got their story in the book. And just fascinating stuff from Harold Moore with the blow-by-blow of what happened that night and Joe Burgoon's dogged pursuit to track down those correct killers. Boy, those guys are heroes in my book.
I can see that. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that book, simply if only because I'm the publisher, but because I'm fascinated by what you were just telling us. Bob, thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview. I really appreciate it. You were my guinea pig, and I'm very grateful for everything that you've had to tell us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Love you and Leah.
Thank you. Okay.